my pleasure now to introduce a really special friend, Reddy. His accomplishments on the clinical side are remarkable, but what he's done at the AIG in Hyderabad, I think may be his greatest legacy. He's established a really remarkable unit, hospital conglomeration, research facility, et cetera, in Hyderabad. And the team that he's assembled is really remarkable. And I think he's basically sort of shown us a pathway, if you will, to an institution that can accomplish great clinical care, research, and training all under one roof at a really high level. So we've asked him to do just that, to tell us about research, education, and training under one roof, the AIG model.
Thank you, Rob, and I'd like to thank Sham and Rob for giving me this opportunity to talk about a dream that became a reality, the building of AIG hospitals. But before that, let me just get you back to what's happening in healthcare in India. In general, people who want to get treated go to two types of hospitals. The government hospitals, either state or federal government funded. This is, of course, free for the patients, so it's like an old British legacy that we have. There are the other group who can afford or who have insurance generally go to these private corporate hospitals, which, of course, charge their patients. They are for-profit hospitals, not like non-profit here. So the government hospitals have large volume of patients. They have, in some places, infrastructure, but in most often, although there are research facilities, there are no research funds to do any research. Whereas the private hospitals have much lower volume of patients. They have infrastructure, but unfortunately, they don't have a research culture. They're non-existent. So this is the current situation of healthcare in India. About 30 years back, small group of us gastroenterologists had a dream that we could come together with the gastroenterology hospitals where you could do patient care, research, training, innovations all together. Sometimes dreams can become a reality, and in our case, it was a series of serendipities that resulted in this reality. And let me just tell you about how this happened, because this can happen to anybody. Me and Dr. Rao, both of us were practicing in a small ambulatory center, endoscopy center. And we, of course, were doing endoscopy work, but in a small type of fashion. One night, about 11 o'clock, I got a call from the neighboring chief minister, the governor of the state, telling me that wife has cholangitis following laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Could I actually come to do an ERCP? Because that particular state did not have anybody doing ERCP. So he sent his private jet, so I went in, put in some of my equipment. It was about 12 o'clock in the night when I reached the hospital in that particular city, Bangalore. So I went inside, and his wife was in septicemic shock, was hypotensive, had probably a few minutes to live. And all around the hospital, there were the followers of this chief minister, all gundas with all sorts of weapons around. So the first thing I did was I asked the director of the hospital, where was the exit door behind, so that something happens, I can go. But fortunately for us, this was an impacted stone, and it just took us a few minutes to open it up. A lot of pus came out. And early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, this patient was actually sitting up and having breakfast. The chief minister who came in was very surprised. He said, "This is like a miracle." And he sort of told us, "What do you want?" I told him that, "Can you help us with a building in Hyderabad?" And one of his followers was building a 3-star hospital there. He called him and told him, "Give this doctor the building." So when the governor says something, the followers have to follow. So he gave it to us. And that's how we started the first 250-bedded gastroenterology unit, which was relatively small, but for a single specialty, we thought it was okay. We got together a small group of gastroenterologists, medical, surgical, and started working together. And soon it became very crowded. The outpatient department was like this, lots of crowds. And then second act of serendipity occurred when our state chief minister came for a checkup, and then he couldn't come in. It was so crowded. And he said, "What's this? Looks like a fish market. why are you working here? Why don't you make a bigger one? So that's how he gave us this 10 acres of land in a good part of Hyderabad. And in 2017, 2018, the first unit of AIG hospitals came up. Over a period of few years, we started building it. So our main aim was to create a place where gastroenterologists could do everything: patient care, education, research, innovation. And this was not actually possible in the setup that we had at that point of time in our country. So we came up with this clinical building, which is number 2, and then we had a research building beside that. We are now finished our new emergency tower. 2 more towers are coming up, one on transplant, other oncology, proton therapy. So this whole unit is coming up. We currently have 1,400 inpatient beds going into 2,500, 300 intensive care unit beds, mostly hepatic encephalopathies, pancreatitis, and so on. We do on average over 800 endoscopy procedures a day, many therapeutic in that, 50 complex GI surgeries. So it looks like a large volume, but you must remember that we actually have 1.3 billion people, actually maybe 1.35 now. So this is a large population, and therefore the numbers are going to be large. Our passion was for endoscopy. So what we wanted to do at that time is create the largest endoscopy center in the world. So 200,000 feet of this area was given to endoscopy, over 30 endoscopy suites. The whole area was full of this. And you can see even they work 22 hours a day, the endoscopy suites. And you can see even late in the day, number of patients waiting there for the procedures. We realized at that time that opportunity, actually these volumes creates opportunity for training, research, and so on. And this was a great opportunity for us at that point of time. We also built a lot of hybrid theaters where endoscopists and minimally invasive surgeons like laparoscopic surgeons could work together to raise the boundaries of invasive endoscopy. And also what we did was to incorporate many adjuvant therapies into our endoscopy rooms. For example, our extracorporeal shockwave machine is just beside the ERCP room, so you can just use it more practically, more often, and so on. Because the practice of gastroenterology was large in AIG, in fact, 80% of our hospital practice is still gastroenterology. We have cardiology and other specialties, but predominantly. So we divided practice into specialized teams, which narrowly work in their area only. But of course, we exchange ideas very commonly. So it's we have different teams that are coming together. And this is, I think, a vision that what Peter Cotton told us in the morning, a vision that you have all different specialties related to gastroenterology all working together to create a digestive disease institute. And that's what happened. Of course, our emphasis was in endoscopy. We have about 40 endoscopists working continuously. Now we are subspecialized into different teams, those who do third space, those who do pancreatico-biliary, those who are doing enteroscopy. Again, this becomes easy in an institution like us, which is salaried, there's no RVUs, or there's no tracking of cases and so on, so we can freely exchange our cases. So we have now a very talented group of endoscopists who have large volumes to practice on, train on, and therefore expertise comes in very easily. So having developed this infrastructure, we actually stand on 4 pillars: the pillar of patient care, academics, research, and of course, community welfare. And let me just dwell a little on each of these. Academics first, you can see that we have a 3-year fellowship program where medical or surgical gastroenterologists come and get trained for 3 years. They have an exit exam which they can pass. So currently, for example, at a time we have 56 medical fellows or 30 surgical fellows. This was a recent meeting of our past alumni. Our hope was not to get gastroenterology fellows to pass the exam, but to produce clinicians who think, endoscopists who innovate, scientists who ask questions, teachers who teach, and leaders who build institutions. Unfortunately for us, our trainees have done extremely well. There are now about over 300 of them distributed in different parts of the country. And of course, many of them are leaders in their own field in different states. They are heads of the departments. They're innovating, they're publishing, and this is, for us, a very happy situation. We've had many international trainees who have come for short periods of time, again going back and leading their units in various parts of the world. Training in endoscopy in AIG is still 1:1. We have somebody doing endoscopy, a mentor standing behind and teaching you how to do. But we soon realized that this conventional type of training is good, but we have to also incorporate a pre-training simulatory structure where you get trained on, say, tissues or simulators and so on before they go into actual training, especially with the type of procedures that are coming into gastroenterology, all these invasive procedures. I think some sort of training before we actually go into human area is very important, and that's why we created these large clinical skill labs in the basement of a hospital. These skill labs are like this. Typically, they have the stands where you can have both surgical laparoscopy or surgical accessories onto this. And then, in fact, this is one of the most used area in our hospital, the hands-on skill lab. You can see that it's continuously used over, we have managed to train over 1,500 gastroenterologists over this period in these labs, and I think this is something that has helped us a lot. So we trained a large number of trainees in this, and of course our passion also is endoscopy workshops, and for this we created a very large studio, endoscopic studio in our hospital. In fact, this was done by CNN. They provided all the basic structure. It was expensive, but it's worthwhile because now this has become like all the endoscope rooms are connected. It's a plug-and-play system. Whenever we want to transmit anyway, we just have to plug it in, and then every week or every month we are doing transmissions all over the world. In fact, this was inaugurated by Rob Hoss. You can see him here in 2017. He gave the first inaugural address from here. And since then, of course, we've been doing a lot of workshops transmitted from here. And again, this has been an investment, I think, which is worthwhile for us. Of course, transmissions have been a very common feature, and workshops like this, I think, are not only useful in terms of transmitting knowledge, but inspiring younger generations of gastroenterologists to take up therapeutic endoscopy as a profession. We actually had the first World Congress of Endoscopy in Hyderabad in 2017, and you can see Shyam here. There are many of the faculty here were there, and this was, again, extremely good. We also been very fortunate that several masters in endoscopies over the period of time have been demonstrating in our workshop. You can see Guido here, Rob, and of course G Bang. All of them have contributed to our workshops, and also not only have the trainees or the attendees learn from them, we at AIG have learned from them. Again, you can see Jack and Itoi and Horst. I think these are actually live wire workshops, which gives us an inspiration for those who are conducting them also to keep improving. We went into artificial intelligence very early because we realized that this is going to be an important aspect of not only endoscopy, but even hospital administration. So what we did was we got 40 artificial engineer Googles working in Google company to come and join us in the hospital. At that time, we didn't realize this, but we later realized that AI engineers are costlier than doctors. So it becomes a very expensive department. And of course, there's a lot of work that's going on in this. All endoscopy rooms are directly streaming to the AI center in the hospital. So they have a huge amount of material to work on. They're looking at different things, of course. That's another topic for later. But I think this is something for the future. Now, coming to research, the second pillar that we've had, one of the problems in India, I think most places all over the world, is that there's a separation between basic scientists and clinicians. We don't meet. Sometimes we're in different buildings, so it becomes extremely difficult. And I think ideas don't get exchanged. We realized that this is something that we should break this barrier. And so what we did was to build a big research tower just beside our main tower. And in this research tower, we started putting in a lot of basic scientists to work together. We call this the Translational Research Center because we don't want to waste money on fundamental research. What happens is we don't have enough money to put into basic science research, which is not going to be translated into clinical work very quickly. So we had several departments in this. Some of them are like, we have a biobank, so every biological material that comes out of AIG goes into biobanks. We have hundreds and thousands of this material. So over a period of time, we are now getting some interesting data from this. Some of the patients have been on follow-up for us for 8 or 9 years, developing a pancreatic cancer. We can go and take their tissues or the blood and see if there's some biomarker that we could have missed. So this is some of the areas we are working with Leroy Hood from Seattle with this. H. pylori still is extremely common in India. In fact, 60% of normal population has H. pylori. So we decided to build a large H. pylori lab with the help of Barry Marshall, who advises on this. And of course, microbiome research, the whole phenomenon of microbiome is going to change everything in the gut, I think, and that's another large center that we build up. We also have the largest center in Asia for endocrine and exocrine pancreatic disease, because this is extreme chronic pancreatitis and type 2 diabetes, extremely common area. Some of the work that our scientists are doing, very fundamental cutting edge research in this area. And for example, we are now shown in Indian population that it's not actually insulin resistance, but insulin deficiency, which is responsible for type 2 diabetes. And a lot of new ideas are coming from here. We also realized that for endoscopy, engineering innovations are very important. Unless engineers and endoscopists come together, I think true innovations are going to come very slowly. So what we did was to set up a center of engineering innovations in our hospital, giving a large space to the Indian Institute of Technology, which is like MIT here. We have IITs in India. So the faculty of IIT are part of our faculty. They come, they stay with us, and then of course, again, a lot of new innovations are coming out. Maybe a couple of years we'll have a lot of devices coming. So this has resulted, of course, translational research in many, many papers that are coming out from our center, and also helped our patient care. For example, the stem cell center here, we are now very aggressively using it for IBD patients. Those who are resistant to biological therapy respond quite well to stem cell therapy. Similarly, for patients with cirrhosis, for transplant as a bridge, we use stromal stem cells. This is again very useful. And we also got help from many other institutions, from Gemelli in Italy, for Guido and Ivo have helped us with this regenerative endoscopy, which we're starting to use, and very complex fistulas can now heal. And this is something where our basic scientists have helped us. We learned this from Gemelli, from Ivo and his group, and you can see what we do is to take out fat from the thigh here, get out the stromal vascular factor, and quite dramatically some of these fistulas are common. So what happened is, because this type of treatment is not available around Asia Pacific area, we're starting to get a lot of referrals from different parts of the country for these very difficult fistulas, and they heal extremely well when we're starting to do this rectovaginal, esophageal, tracheal, and so on. And you can see that healing with this. One of the most difficult departments that we had establishing at AIG was the animal lab, both the small and large animal lab. The authorities didn't give us permissions. They were very strict about it. Unfortunately, I think animal ethics becomes extremely difficult. And our board also was trying to question us why we want to have an animal lab in a hospital like this. What's the use there? We had to convince them that research there was very important. And this, of course, has helped us. We have now worked a lot on genetically modified mice for chronic pancreatitis, which is an area of interest for IBD. We've also been able to create artificial esophagus in the small animal models. So one of the problems that we had at AIG, and this is a problem that we identified long back but didn't have an answer, was that we are very poor at the art of publishing. In fact, I'm a great admirer of Sham and G, how they go about that cases, how the publications get into very high impact journals. So most of the clinicians in AIG, where by the time you finish your work in the night, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you're not thinking about research, papers, and so on. Again, I think Michael Burke is another one who has managed to combine clinical work with publishing high-end journals. So what we did was we actually engaged a group of physicians in India who come back from US, who just set up these, they're called co-guide. They would actually, you can actually engage them. They come into your hospital, put 5 or 6 people, and they will teach your clinicians how to do research, how to get papers out and everything. So we have these think spaces with them, which we create large spaces, and they have actually been guiding us for a couple of years now, setting up registries, setting up RCTs, and so on, multi-center studies. So this has resulted in increasing. You can see that suddenly our outputs have increased. We're now starting to publish about 300 and odd papers a year. We're starting to increase our impact, increasing research, and also I think the whole culture has been to create this interest in our younger doctors who are coming in, including fellows, and therefore I think it becomes a little competitive among different among these people that they keep producing better. So we used to have large volumes. Unfortunately, they did not translate into papers. Now it's happening. You can see my colleague Mohan here, huge number of papers on poem, because we had these large cases, but only now we're converting it. One of the other things we did is we actually got an agreement with the Japanese Society of Endoscopy, because the standard of endoscopy in Japan, especially diagnostic endoscopy, detecting early gastric cancers and so on, extremely high. We used to have early gastric cancers, but we're not detecting them. So we got into them. So what happens is a group of Japanese doctors, especially Noria Ueda and others, come every month to AIG, conduct these small workshops for 30, 40 people. Gastroenterologists come to our institute, and they train you how to do this endoscopy in a proper way, starting from how you should prepare these patients and so on. And for the last 2 or 3 years, once this has started, about 400-500 doctors, even senior doctors in India, have now been trained, so that the whole endoscopy, diagnostic endoscopy in India has been elevated. And suddenly we see this large number of early gastric cancers coming in, techniques to treat them are coming in. I think this is something that has helped us extremely. We have had many research collaborators. It used to be initially the Indian institutes like ICMR and so on, but now we have many international, and this has actually given us an opportunity to do many international multi-center trials. You can see, I think this was with Jack and Guido here. We had several studies, and also this was again with Sham's unit. We have this study on endoscopic necrosectomy, Destin study. So what all these studies taught us, many of these taught us the technique of doing how to do multi-center studies. We learned from our colleagues internationally who have had more experience in this area, and I think this is a culture that is becoming extremely important. One of the problems was funding. Initially, we used to get a lot of funds from the Indian Council of Medical Research, the Department of Biotechnology. Like what's happening with NIH here, it's happening in India, that these funds are drying up. Most of these funds from the government are going for social causes, for other things, and therefore funds are very, very little. So what we did was to switch to private partners. Fortunately for us, in India now, because of boom in tech space and so on, there are a lot of people coming out who are willing to give us funds to do a lot of research. So most of funding now is from private donors. We also realized that one of the ways that you actually look at the quality of endoscopy in unit is to monitor what's happening in terms of complications. And because we do a large number of cases, and because a lot of trainees are involved, we also have significant complications. In fact, we do an audit complication meeting every week where we learn from our mistakes and see how to correct it. And this is a recent publications of the complications, comprehensive complication list from our unit for a year's period. So I think this is something that is very important, that we look back and see where we are right, where we are wrong, and trying to correct all our mistakes. And the last part of our a very important area that I like to tell you is community welfare. 70% of Indians still live in villages. They don't have access to tertiary care. They can't afford to get tertiary care done. So what we did with help of donors is to create these large mobile hospitals. We go into villages, we do endoscopy, ultrasound, or dispense drugs with them. Many of these images are transmitted to our telemedicine department, so we can actually watch and tell our juniors what to do. In fact, some of these villages are so cut off from general access that you can see the example of a village near our place, which was which you couldn't access because of a big lake there, where you take all our mobile vans on a raft there and reach, and when you reach the village, you see these villages all around waiting for medical care. And this has been a very gratifying experience to us, because all this is free care helped with donors. In fact, Hemsley from New York has given us a large fund to look after our rural population. Then what we did was to establish over 150 villages have been taken over, where we do this free service. And in addition, also we learn a lot from them. This is a recent Lancet publication that came from that. We found surprisingly that these people in the rural areas have an extremely high incidence of IBD, Crohn's disease, which nobody realized that. It was not tuberculosis, Crohn's disease. And when we actually looked at the data from what happened, we're doing this for the last 20 years. 20 years back, there was no Crohn's disease, only tuberculosis. But 20 years later now, it's all Crohn's, no tuberculosis. The reason, of course, is the extremely better standards of hygiene that came in, and the invasion with fast foods. Every village has got these hamburgers and chips and noodles and so on. So something has happened there in terms of socio-economic situations, and that has resulted in this. Were there challenges in building age? Of course, there were challenges. And one of the most important challenges was getting the team together. We now have over 8,000 employees, and they come from different socio-economic background, different areas, and getting together to get them to have the same culture, the same humility, the same patient-first thinking was not so easy. But like Henry Ford famously said, coming together is a beginning, which happened, keeping together the progress which is happening, and working together is success, and hopefully we can keep doing that. That's very important. We realize that, of course, it's important to surround yourself with positive people, that institutions are not built by buildings or equipment, they're built by people in the culture, and the culture becomes extremely important. That's what we concentrate on, and this again what a vision that I often admired and taken from Professor Peter Cotton of combined unit, where everything is combined together. You don't look at medical, surgical, radiological, and so on. Fortunately, I've been with my colleague Dr. G.V. Rao, who himself is a very accomplished GI surgeon. Together, you can see, from 97 when we started this institution, till now we work together. The only thing that changed is our hairstyles, otherwise it's same, the relationship. We're fortunate that, like many other hospitals, the Newsweek ranked us as one of the best hospitals. And for me, this is a fantastic occasion to talk on this because of two of my heroes who are here, Professor Peter Cotton, whose vision we always followed and tried to see what we could implement, and of course, Nib Sohendra, an outstanding master endoscopist. I think their vision is something that we try to see if we could translate, and fortunately, I think this is a great occasion for me to sort of present this in front of them. I think the medicine is not just the science of medicine, the art of medicine, but empathy. I think all this put together is what we're trying to teach our staff at AIG, that this is extremely important. And that's how we should practice medicine. In fact, several years back, many years back, when we were starting to build this hospital, Michel Kramer, another hero of mine, told me something very important. He told me, don't build a hospital where patients will come to get treated. Think of an institution where every patient experience is a learning experience. And I think this is absolutely true. We have now been able to convert this at AIG into this thinking. And what we hope is, of course, we still have a long road to go, that at least this philosophy is taken up by some of the hospitals in our country so that the direction of patient care changes. We have better empathetic patient care. We have more teaching, learning, and research to be done. Thank you very much for your attention.